Here's a window in London. Half of it is underground. Carved stone arch, iron flourishes, granite lintel, built by someone who expected you to see it from the street. Except the street is 4 feet above it now. They call it a basement window. I called it that too, for years. Then I found the same window in Paris. Same depth, same arch, same decorative stonework. Then Vienna, then New York, then Chicago, then St. Petersburg. Every old city on earth. Same window, same depth, same story. Basements don't get carved keystones. Coal chutes don't get granite lintels. These weren't built to be underground. The street moved, and nobody will tell you why. I'm not asking you to accept a theory. I'm asking you to look at the physical evidence and then decide whether the official explanation actually fits it. Because there's a comfortable version of this story. Cities grow, debris accumulates, street levels rise over centuries. Natural urban evolution happens everywhere. Except it doesn't happen everywhere. Walk through a medieval English village that never industrialized. The ground floors are still at ground level. The original doors still open onto original streets. No burial, no accumulation. And those buildings are just as old, sometimes older than the ones with half their windows underground. So the question isn't whether cities can bury themselves over time. The question is why specific cities, in specific decades, across multiple continents, all buried themselves to the same depth using the same techniques with almost no photographic documentation of the process. That's not natural accumulation. That's a pattern. And I've lived long enough to know that patterns don't appear without causes. London is one city. You can explain away one city. But what happens when you find the exact same windows at the exact same depth on the other side of the world? Boston, buildings from the 1820s and 1830s. Same partially submerged windows. Same ornate detailing on what are now basement openings. Philadelphia, the same. Lower Manhattan, the same. Montreal, where the underground city reveals finished masonry walls, arched ceilings, and storefronts clearly designed for street-level foot traffic, now accessible only by descending below modern pavement. The depth is consistent, not random, not geological variation. Roughly 8 to 15 feet across almost every case. Enough to bury a full ground floor, enough to turn a main entrance into a ceiling. Different cities, different climates, different geology, different governments, different construction industries, different decades. One result, one depth, one architectural language in what got buried. I've seen enough in my years to know what coincidence looks like. This isn't it. The official histories treat each city as an isolated case, local conditions, local decisions, local geology. They never ask the global question, because the global question has an answer they're not prepared to give. Here's what strikes me most about the depth. It's not random. It's not geological. It corresponds almost exactly to one full floor of architecture, as if whatever happened buried a specific layer and only that layer. Photography arrives in the 1840s. By the 1860s and 70s, photographers are documenting cities in extraordinary detail. Streets, buildings, construction projects, markets, daily life. Engineers are photographing bridges while they're being built. Newspapers are sending photographers to capture urban change. This is precisely the period when, according to the official timeline, many of these cities were raising their street levels. So where are the photographs of that process? If you were burying entire ground floors, entire storefronts, entire main entrances, entire rows of windows, that would be the largest urban transformation in the history of those cities. An operation involving thousands of workers, millions of tons of film material, years of continuous labor. The kind of thing that gets documented, that journalists write about, that engineers record, that residents describe in letters. I went looking. City archives, historical society collections, library photograph holdings. What I found, or rather didn't find, was this. Photographs of completed elevated streets, yes. Photographs of already buried windows, yes. Photographs of the actual process, almost none. No images of fill material being deposited. No images of workers covering ground floor windows. No newspaper accounts describing the logistics of burying entire city blocks. No complaints from business owners about losing their ground floors. When something of that scale leaves no documentary trail, that absence is not a gap in the archive. That absence is the evidence. One city with an empty archive is an accident. Every city with an empty archive is a decision, unless there was nothing to photograph, because it all happened too fast for anyone to reach for a camera. Pompeii. Volcanic ash preserved everything it covered. Food still on tables, objects in place, people mid-motion. Gradual burial destroys. Rapid burial preserves. Now look at what's found in the buried levels of old cities. In Seattle's underground, accessible through Pioneer Square, you can walk through storefronts with original display windows intact. Shelving still attached to walls, counters still in position. Not slowly filled with urban debris over decades, rapidly buried, intact. In Edinburgh's underground city, the original street level of the Old Town, rooms are complete, doorways full height, details preserved. Official explanation: Southbridge was built above the existing street in the 1780s. But those rooms weren't designed to be enclosed. They were designed to have sky above them. The physical characteristics of the buried levels match rapid deposition far better than gradual accumulation. Gradual accumulation leaves debris layers, organic material, evidence of time. Rapid deposition leaves everything exactly where it was. That's what the underground levels show. Everything exactly where it was, just covered. Rapid burial of entire city floors requires an enormous volume of material. Where did it come from? And why did people choose to build on top instead of digging it out? Here's where the official explanation falls apart completely. The buried levels don't show inferior construction. They show construction equal to or better than the floors built above them. In the underground sections of Old Boston and Philadelphia, stonework that now sits below pavement level shows precision cutting that modern contractors openly acknowledge would be difficult to replicate. Single granite pieces fitted with tolerances that don't require mortar to be structural. Arch construction with mathematically precise load distribution. If these were crude utility basements, this wouldn't matter. But they're not crude, they're finished. The craftsmanship is indistinguishable from the floors above. And here's the problem that creates. If the buried level was built first, built to the same standard, with the same techniques, then whoever built it already knew what they were doing before the upper floors existed. The knowledge arrived complete. Official history gives us a development narrative. Skills improve gradually, techniques advance over time. Quality increases as knowledge accumulates. That requires a learning curve. What you find in the buried levels has no learning curve. It arrives fully formed. as if the builders weren't learning, as if they were inheriting. Fully formed construction knowledge, uniform burial depth across the globe, no photographic record of the transition. These three facts don't fit one explanation, they fit a different one. If you've made it this far, you already see the problem. Stay with me, because what comes next is where individual cases stop looking like local anomalies and start looking like one event. Here is something worth noting about the cities where street regrading is documented. A significant number experienced a major disaster in the years immediately before the regrading project. Seattle, the Great Fire of 1889. Regrading follows immediately after. Chicago, the Great Fire of 1871. Massive rebuilding with altered street levels. San Francisco, Earthquake and Fire of 1906. Complete rebuilding of affected districts. Boston, the Great Fire of 1872. Rebuilding with changed levels in affected areas. The pattern is consistent. Disaster, then rebuilding at a new, higher level. The official reading, disaster creates opportunity. Rebuild anyway, might as well correct the grade. The other reading, the grade needed correcting regardless. The disaster provided justification that required no explanation. Nobody asks why you're building higher when the previous level just burned. Nobody demands documentation of fill material when the city is still smoldering. Nobody investigates what got buried when the newspapers are writing about the fire. Convenient disasters. Not one, not two, multiple major cities, the same 50-year window, each providing cover for the same operation, building a new street level over an existing one. The fires are documented. The rebuilding is documented. What isn't documented is why the new level was placed at exactly the height it was, not higher, not lower, precisely enough to bury one floor. I've read city council minutes from the regrading projects that are documented. They all share the same quality. They describe what was done, they don't explain why. Seattle's minutes from the 1890s, new street levels, construction sequences, contractor assignments. No discussion of where millions of cubic yards of fill came from. No debate about burying versus excavating. Not one objection from building owners about to lose their ground floors. Chicago post-fire records, same structure. Engineers describe specifications, no record of why the new grade was set where it was, just a level, specified with precision, implemented without documented justification. I've sat through enough meetings in my life to know what deliberation paperwork looks like. These aren't deliberation records, these are execution records. As if the decision was made somewhere else, by someone else, and local officials were handed a specification and told to build. Here is where everything converges. Take the physical evidence alone. Buried windows with ornate detailing, consistent depth, intact lower floors, preserved contents, no gradual debris accumulation. That points to rapid deposition, a single event or series of related events that covered multiple urban areas in a short window of time. Take the documentary evidence alone. No photographs of the transition, no records of fill material origin, council minutes with implementation but no deliberation, disasters that provide cover for regrading in city after city. That points to coordinated concealment of the process. Take the architectural evidence alone. Buried construction equal to or better than the floors above. Knowledge arriving fully formed with no learning curve. Design vocabulary consistent across buried levels in cities with no documented connection. That points to a prior civilization whose work was being built over. Each line of evidence, taken alone, is arguable. Together, they point to one thing: At some point in the 19th century, whether through natural catastrophe, a directed event, or something we have no name for, a layer of the world was covered. Ground floors became basements, main entrances became underground corridors, street-level windows became ankle-level curiosities that tour guides explain away with the same comfortable scripts they've been using for generations. And the cities that inherited that covered layer didn't excavate it. They built on top of it, then documented what they built and left no record of what was underneath. The windows are still there, the ornate lintels, the carved keystones, the decorative ironwork, designed to be seen from a street that was buried, still waiting below your feet in every city old enough to have them. They didn't sink. They were covered. And the civilization whose architecture they decorated, the one that built to that standard at that scale across that many cities, disappears from maps in the same decades those windows go underground. I've watched official explanations hold for a long time on far less evidence than this. This one I stopped believing years ago. The windows are still there. The depth is measurable. The archive gaps are real. The disasters are documented. The missing deliberations are documented by their absence. Every piece of this is verifiable. What isn't documented is the event that connects them, because documenting it would require acknowledging that what we walk on every day in every old city is not the original ground. It's the cover. Next time you walk through the old part of your city, look down. Find the windows. Measure the depth. Ask yourself what that window was facing before the street came up to meet it. That question is the beginning of a much longer investigation. The next video goes into the buildings themselves, the construction techniques in the buried levels that don't match the tools that supposedly built them. If this raised something you can't put down, you know what to do.